All right, everyone, I think we'll probably get started here right now. Just let the last couple of people get some seats and then... welcome to Deep's very first event of 2026. Happy New Year to everybody. Tonight we will be having Jackie Kloosterboer here. She'll be giving us a presentation on personal disaster preparation. Jackie's got a long history. She worked for the city with emergency planning and has her own business now and is actually has a very good book published on the subject. We've had her here several times before. We're glad to have her back again. So if everyone, after Jackie. Oh, and just a few housekeeping things before we do that. We've got some upcoming events I just wanted to tell people about. On the 14th of February, we'll be hosting from 10:30 in the morning till 12. We'll be doing a water security post-disaster workshop for people. That'll be here in this room. And then March the 5th, we're having the Deep Annual General Meeting also in this room. And we will have a presentation put on by the Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services that night as well. And then on the 21st of March from 10:30 to 12, which is Saturday, it's a workshop on post-disaster sanitation. So basically what to do when the toilets don't flush anymore. So I'm getting yourself ready for that potentiality. And then on May the 2nd, actually it's May the 5th, is it not? Yep. From 10 to 12 out at our disaster support hub out here, we're going to be having kind of it's an urban wildlife community event. It'll be kind of like a fair. We'll have a lot of different people like the Vancouver Fire Services, is it still called Terracin, the gas people, BC Hydro, other stakeholders in basically to deal with urban rural fire issues. That should be like a pretty big event going on. So.
Chris, it's the 2nd of May.
The 2nd?
Yeah.
Oh.
Set for Saturday.
Okay, my mistake. Okay, so 2nd.
Actually, my mistake.
Okay.
It's all on the website.
Yeah. We'll announce it again too, so we'll be totally clear next time. So, all right, anyways, we'll give it on to Jackie.
Yeah, perfect. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jumpstart Your Disaster Preparedness. How many of you have taken a course on disaster preparedness before? And how did you make out with your disaster preparedness? A little bit? Not so much. That's pretty typical. Most people, they go to courses, they take programs on getting prepared, but people don't get prepared. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is why people are not getting prepared. I'm going to share some stories. We're also going to talk a little bit about preparedness and what each and every one of us needs to do. We live in an area where disasters happen. I worked for the City of Vancouver for 20 years as their, I did a lot of public sessions like this, and I also responded to the house and apartment fires in the city. I had a team of volunteers, and that was what we did. When there was a house or an apartment fire, we were there to help the people. And time again, even in a house fire or an apartment fire, your level of preparedness makes a world of difference. And you can see the people that have never bothered, maybe done a little bit, as opposed to the people that have taken steps and are prepared. It's like night and day. So we'll work our way through this presentation, but I really hope from here you will take the steps to get you, your family, and even your pets prepared for a disaster. So being prepared isn't always what you think it is. We don't know when the next disaster is going to happen. We may get a warning. You know, if there's a forest fire, you may have a little bit of a warning. However, where you are here, if there's a fire, it's going to be moving pretty quickly. Not so much like the Kelownas and the forest fires we've seen on the island, where there has been a little bit of a notice for people to get ready. So we need to think about that disasters happen when they happen. And preparedness is about people and not the stuff. If you go out and put your kits together, you go out and purchase your kits, that is a good first step. But your family has to understand how to use the kits, what the plans are, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. So what that really comes down to is most of us are not as prepared as we think we are. If you've got a kit and that's all you've done, it's going to be a little bit of a help, but you've got to have those conversations with your family. Your family needs to know what the plan is. Joe and Hilda, I got competition with the music. Joe and Hilda lived in Lytton, British Columbia. I'm sure you can all remember back to what happened in Lytton. And Joe and Hilda had been on evacuation alert for several days. And this was a time when they were supposed to be getting ready, getting all of the items that they need in case they had to evacuate. When you're on an evacuation alert, it's the warning. And when the order drops, that's when you get out of town, and you may need to go very quickly. During that time before the Lytton fire, Lytton had been breaking heat records. They were the hottest place in Canada 3 days in a row, and then all of a sudden, Lytton was gone. The fire destroyed the whole community. On the evening of the fire, Joe and Hilda were sitting in their home, and it was so hot, they didn't know how to stay cool. They had fans going, they had wet towels draped around them, and they even put tinfoil up in their windows to reflect the heat. The evening of the fire, they were sitting there wondering what the heck to do, and all of a sudden they heard commotion. Get out, get out. And they went to the door, and the people said, the fire is right behind you. And they looked, and they could see the fire quickly approaching their home. They didn't have time to prepare. They only had time to grab the car keys and get in their vehicle and head out of town. That is not a great situation to be in, and you don't want to put yourself in that situation. I was working in Chilliwack, and Joe and Hilda drove down to Chilliwack, and Emergency Support Services would set up a reception center, and if something happens here, Dunbar Community Center could be set up as a reception center, and Joe and Hilda came to the reception center in Chilliwack, and they were devastated. They had absolutely nothing but the clothes on their back and their car keys and a few things that they had in their truck. But their photographs, all the memories, everything they owned was gone in that fire. What if they had taken some time to get prepared? When you're on alert, you can load things into your vehicle so when the order drops, you can be ready to go. So, we live in an area where we can have an earthquake, we can have a number of disasters. So I know forest fire is probably not our biggest threat here, but you are close to forests, so definitely something to think about. But you do not want to be like Joe and Hilda, where you've got absolutely nothing. So definitely think about that as you're thinking about preparedness. So why don't we prepare? And I think I have heard almost every excuse, and we see disasters happening all around us. Right now, we're in winter, snowstorms can happen. They're not going to impact everybody, but they could impact seniors, people with disabilities that are not able to get around. And, we live in an area that is overdue for an earthquake, a house fire, an apartment fire. A number of different disasters can happen, and I'm sure you can all remember COVID and what we went through with that. If I had told you you're all going to stay at home for over a year, you would have thought I was crazy. But here we were. We'd all had to stay home. So disasters come in many shapes and forms, and the reality is most people are not prepared. So I want you to turn to your neighbor, not your husband, wife, your partner, but your neighbor, and tell them why you are not prepared. What is stopping you from being prepared? If you are prepared, and there was a few people that said they are prepared, Why did you get prepared? What made you do it? Take a few minutes, and then I want to see if I hear any new excuses. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, talk to your neighbors. Wow, you guys like to talk. Could not hear any music.
How do we know what to be prepared if we're prepared, if we don't know what it is we should be prepared with?
I will tell you. That's to come. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about preparedness later. I just want to find out first. Okay, who is brave enough to share why they're not prepared? I've got my pen out. If I hear an excuse I haven't heard before, let's hear why some of you. Okay.
Depending on what sort of situations I should be preparing for, I just find there's too much doubt, too many questions in my mind to create a couple of realistic prepared things.
Too much going on, not enough, don't really know what's going to happen. Is that sort of?
Well, it's said often 72 hours, we should have food for 72 hours. To me, that sounds awfully short, and one would need more. And I've sort of prepared some tin cans in my basement for the house, and then I've prepared a backpack for the car, but then keeping that up to date, and how many bottles of water can you get in a small backpack? These sort of things, it's just, I don't find practical solutions or answers yet.
Yeah, a lot of work getting prepared. Was everyone able to hear what she said? So being prepared for 72 hours, is that even long enough? And, those are the things we're going to look at. But that is, it's overwhelming. Like, what do I do? How do I keep my stuff safe? Where do I keep my stuff? If you are presenting down in Yaletown, you get totally different questions here because everybody lives in little tiny apartments. They don't have room to store anything. So there are definitely some challenges. So thanks for sharing that. Anybody else?
Yeah, there's also a degree of risk perception and the degree of lack of control. The types of disasters depend on, are we talking about another heat dome versus a major earthquake?
Yeah.
if I am able, I would acquire fans, I would acquire air conditioning, things like that. But with a major earthquake, doesn't matter how rich or poor you are very vulnerable. And in a disaster of that scale, I think the thought is so scary, as I was sharing with John, that we stop wanting to talk about it.
Yeah.
We want to think about something more pleasant.
I totally hear what you're saying, but with that, if you don't talk about it and you don't prepare for it, you're going to be worse off. If you talk about it and know what some of your options are. So we have an earthquake and your house is damaged, you can't go into your house, what would you do? Who do you know that lives close by that you could maybe walk to? What if bridges are damaged? How would you get there? Do you have some basic supplies? Even going to that level, you're going to be much better off than standing in your house going, what do I do now? I've never thought about this. And your stress level is going to be down. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some ways to do that. But a lot of people feel the same way. And like, where do I start? How do I prepare for an earthquake as opposed to a fire? And if you're ready for an earthquake, you'll really be ready for anything. But it's the process and it's the talking to your family. What if you're not together? What would you do? How would you connect? Is your cell phone going to work? Well, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Probably not if it's a major earthquake. I remember working down at Celebration of Lights, and just the sheer amount of people, calls were dropping left, right, and center. I can imagine in an earthquake, everyone phoning and finding out if their family is okay. We're going to have a lot of issues with cell phones. So how will you communicate? What plans do you have? And the more options you have, the better your chances you're going to make that connection. Anybody else want to share? Yeah.
Well, mine has always been about that. If there is an earthquake, what part of my house is going to be damaged? Like, I've got a kit in my front hall closet close to the front door.
Perfect.
What if it sort of caves in and I can't get at it? Or whatever foodstuffs that I might have in the basement and I can't get to the basement. And then that sort of, I get stuck on that. Like, where do I put it? Because I got nowhere to put it outside. So where do I put it in that I know I'm going to be able to access it if I need it?
Okay, what if your house isn't impacted and you didn't do it because you thought your house might fall down? Wouldn't that be worse? And that's one of my comments in here, so thank you for that. We all think about the worst and, what if I can't access it? But we don't know what's going to happen to our houses. There's so many what ifs. Where's the epicenter of the earthquake? How close do you live to it? We've had earthquakes here before where we've had very little damage. Had the epicenter been closer, it could have been a different story. So having the supplies is better than not having them. If your house is damaged and you can't get in, well, that's not going to work for you. But if your house is not damaged, at least you've got the supplies. So, just think of it from different angles. But that is a very common thought that really does stop you in your tracks with getting prepared.
I have that same problem about what happens if your house falls down and you can't get to your kit. So my idea, which I haven't done, procrastination, is that instead, I have a 1925 house. Well, put it in the garage. The garage is so wiggly wobbly anyway that if it does fall down, it'll be no problem to pick up the timbers and get to my pack.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the house, but in the garage we could get to it. So that is my plan, which I haven't done.
Okay, but you're thinking about it. And the starting to plan, starting to think is the next step in getting your plans done. So if anyone has one different that we don't talk about here, let me know. So where do I start to get prepared? Google earthquake preparedness and you'll get millions of hits. What's accurate? What's not? How do I do it? And it's overwhelming. You really don't know where to start. What if I can't access my disaster supplies? And that comes up a lot, but you're better off to have them than not have them. You'd never forgive yourself if you didn't bother, and here you are facing something. And there's also other disasters that can happen besides earthquakes. So extended power outages, different things like that can happen where your supplies may come in very useful to get you through that time. I'm too busy. Especially if you've got young kids and you're taking them here and there, you work full time, you got lots of commitments on the weekend. People's schedules are overflowing and they just don't make time for it. And, it's not something we all want to go home and get prepared for an earthquake, but it is an important thing to do. I will do it tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. I think that's one of the most common ones. And I was guilty of that for quite some time until I was at work and somebody said, "Where's your emergency kit?" And it's like, I haven't done it yet. And guess what I did that night? But we do have to have kits, and we've got to make sure the kits are updated and that the kits are going to be available to us. We got to get past the excuses. Those excuses are not going to work very well when you're at home on a Saturday night, we've had an earthquake, and you've got no supplies. So you've got to get past those excuses and take action. So after a disaster, if you think you're going to be getting out of town very quickly, may not be the case. You know what rush hour is like right now. When you think of all the people that come to work in Vancouver, they're all wanting to get home. They want to get home to their family, make sure they're okay. And it's going to be gridlock in the city, and that's something we need to think about as we plan. I'm sure a lot of you leave Vancouver, maybe go over to Richmond or out to Burnaby. What happens if you can't get home? What does that mean to you, your family, and even your pets? So you've got to think about that when you're planning. You think you're going to run down to Stong's and get, dinner tonight? Probably not going to happen. They don't have a big warehouse out back with lots of supplies. Grocery stores, what you see on the shelves is pretty much what they get. They have trucks coming in every night with supplies. So they're going to run out very quickly. So you need to make sure you've got those tin cans, you've got the food. And I don't know if you shop at Costco, just get a few flats of, soup and different things like that, and that can be helpful. Yeah?
A can opener that doesn't go into the wall.
Yes, a can opener that does not go in, that is not an electric can opener. Yeah, there'd be nothing worse than having your can of whatever and not being able to open it. So yeah, different things like that. And at the end, I'm on my website, you can print out a list of all of the supplies that, use it as a checklist to help guide you through, which will make it easier, but we'll talk about that after. Call 911 today, and they come fairly quickly. After, a major event, they may not be able to come. So what does that mean to you and your family? Would it make sense to take a first aid course? Or who in your neighborhood has a first aid course? You guys are really fortunate here to have the DEEP program, and they've done a lot of work to support the community. But most communities don't have that. So, you need to think about that. And I think what DEEP has done is absolutely amazing. And after a disaster, you could be on your own for 72 hours or longer. So what does that look like? How will you survive? What about your extended family, your kids, your cousins, and, your grandkids? How are they all going to be? How, is all that going to come together? Do they live close where maybe you can go to their house, they can come to your house? These are things you need to think about. But, planning for you and your family, if you live on your own, plan for you at home, but look at your extended family if it makes sense to do so. So think about the support that you could need or would need in an emergency. So I want to tell you a story about Ben and Mia. They lived in the Okanagan, and again, it's a wildfire. But they were planning Emma's 5th birthday, and they were going to have a big pool party. This was her big birthday. All the friends and family were coming, and her husband had to run quickly to the store to get the balloons. So they had been on an evacuation alert. There was a forest fire, but they'd been on alert many times before. Why would this time be any different? So he jumped into the car, went down to pick up the balloons, and all of a sudden the order dropped. He was not able to get back home. So she had to get her family in the car. Fortunately, none of the other guests had arrived. She was able to get her family in the car, scrambled around, got everything, got the dog in the car, and started driving. She went to phone her husband to find out where he was. She didn't have her phone. She could not go back to get it. And she was at a loss. She did not know where she was going to go. They had never talked about what would happen if an earthquake happened. So she thought, well, I guess I'll go to my mom's. And she lived, about 100 miles away and started driving there. Her husband didn't know. He's phoning, she's not answering. He soon realized she probably didn't have the phone. He didn't know where she had gone. He trying to reach the family and nobody had heard from her, so they had no idea. Can you imagine the panic, what that would feel like, not knowing what had happened to your family? Did they get out safely? Where they were going? What ended up happening is she went to her mom's and he went to his mom's in another community, and they were able to connect eventually. But what if they had a plan? What if they had simply sat down as a family and said, if we have to evacuate, we'll go to my mom's or we'll go to your mom's? And think of how simple that could have been. This was a horrible experience for the whole family, not knowing. So you think these little steps don't amount to much, but they truly do. They make a big difference in your family's well-being after an event happens. So panic is not a good planner. If you're trying to plan as you're, on evacuation order, running around your house trying to grab things, you're not going to remember everything you need. Do you know what the number one thing is people forget when they evacuate their home from a house fire or an apartment fire? Their car keys. They just run out and here's their car sitting outside. They could drive away, but their cars are in the house that's on fire or the apartment, and the fire department doesn't let them back in for obvious reasons. But if they had their car keys, they could go to mom and dad's, go to a friend. So simple things like that. If you have a grab and go kit by your front door, you have to evacuate, you quickly grab it and go. You're not going to be worried about what to get, what not, what you have forgotten. Medications, if it's a house fire, an apartment fire, pretty easy to get to the drugstore to get replacements, but it's still an extra step. If you could have those in your emergency kit, it's going to work a lot better. Now with medications, you always want to talk to your family doctor before storing any medications. I am a diabetic. If I can't store my insulin in my grab and go kit, it has to be kept in the fridge. So it makes an extra step for me, but I've thought it through and I know what I'm going to do. So if you're on medications, talk to your family doctor or pharmacist. But don't try to plan what you're going to do when the disaster is happening, when the fire alarms are going off and you have to evacuate. All you got to remember is to grab your grab and go kit. It's going to make it a whole lot easier for you.
I guess you need cash too.
Cash is really important to have, especially in an earthquake type situation. If we don't have bank machines and things like that, so having cash in your kit. You've got teenagers, don't tell them it's there. But having cash really does make a difference, yeah. So important to have. And plans reduce the panic. Having a fire, being in an earthquake is never going to be a fun event, but it's going to be a lot calmer if you've got plans, you know what your options are, you know where to meet your family, you've had these conversations. It's going to work a whole lot better for everybody. So the hard truth is just because you've got the supplies doesn't mean you're prepared. And we've talked about this a fair bit already. You've got to have the conversations with your family. Where are the kits kept? There's a lot of families when usually it's the mom, she'll go out and get the kits, and the husband or partner has no idea where they are, what's going on with it. He just knows there's kits in the closet and, whatever. But that doesn't help anybody. Your family needs to know what the plan is. Sit down with your family. If you've got grandkids that come and stay with you, have a plan with them. Talk to their parents. Like, what would happen? You're babysitting your grandkids for the weekend. Mom and dad have gone away. What's the plan? Do you have an emergency kit, a grab-and-go kit for your grandkids at your home? So things like that can make a world of difference. And getting kids to build their own kits really opens up the conversation, and you can make it a fun event. If you've got your grandkids or your kids, plan out what an emergency kit is, talk about it at an age-appropriate level. They study this in school, and people say, oh, I don't want to scare my kids, but they're going to be a lot more scared when a disaster happens and they don't know what to do. And I have a slide on that. So if you don't share the plan, you don't have a plan. So kids don't know what to do, and partners can assume different things. You and your partner may be sitting there and you think if something happens, we're going to go over here to, my mom's, and your partner thinks, no, we're going to go to, his mom's, and that's not going to help. You've got to know what plan A is, what plan B is. Have your plan written down. Doesn't have to be a fancy plan. I've got a copy I'll hand out at the end. A simple plan like this where you just fill in a few things, and what if you're at home or if you're at work and your husband or partner works close to you. Do you have a plan how to meet up? Simple things like that can make all the difference in the world. So I will give you that plan at the end. And, in a stressful situation, you don't want to try to have to figure out what to do. So a couple of common myths that we often see: help will arrive. Yes, if you have a house fire, an apartment fire, chances are the fire department is going to be there very quickly. In an earthquake, maybe not so quick, but these are things we need to be aware of. The government will take care of me. Well, I know the City of Vancouver's emergency program. I worked there for 20 years. They have a great program, but they can't look after everybody. They will open up a reception center. It may even be here if this building is safe, but they need to get a building inspector in to check the building. So I know this is an older building. But, they will open it up, but it's going to take time. So you truly will be on your own for the, first few days. I have insurance, so I'm covered. Well, it's great you have insurance, but does your insurance cover earthquakes? What's your living out allowance? If you have a house fire, how long can you stay in a hotel for? Will they put you up into an apartment? I've seen people out in some of the apartment fires have been out for a year before they can get back in. So these are things you need to know. I have a kit, so I'm ready. I put it together a few years ago. Well, I think we touched on it earlier. Everything in that kit almost expires. So you've got to check your kit on a regular basis, and every 6 months when the clocks change. If you do it then, your kits are always going to be in good shape. I always have my phone with me. Well, that's great, but do you have a charger too? You're not able to charge it, you're going to have problems. And will phones even be working in an emergency event? So that's the million-dollar question. We just don't know. And my partner takes care of the emergency planning. Well, good, but you got to have, you've got to understand what that plan is. So a reality check. First responders may be overwhelmed, services delayed, and old kits fail. Mice are everywhere. This year and last year, I have heard more stories from people. I do a number of these workshops and training across the province, And I've heard more stories about mice getting into people's kits, and they're destroyed. A mouse gets in, you essentially don't have a kit. So make sure, I don't even like looking at that mouse. Make sure, I'm going to stand over here. Make sure you check your kits, keep them in a safe place where mice can't get into them, but that does happen. I don't like that slide. So where do you start? Keep it simple. I'll give you one of these home checklists, and this is a great place to start. It gets you talking about it, and then from this you can start to build out what you need to do. Keep it practical. You don't have to go out and get everything all today. If you're not going to take the time to put a kit together, there's a number of good stores out there that do sell emergency kits, so take a look at those. Don't buy them, like the real cheap ones, you really do get what you pay for with an emergency kit. But a lot of these items you can get at the dollar store, like a foil blanket, things like that. But when you're looking at flashlights and radios, make sure you get quality ones. And make it doable. You don't have to go out and get it all done today. Spread it over a couple of days. So this is probably one of the easiest things to do, and this really works well for a house fire, an apartment fire. I have been to many fires in Vancouver where I arrive on scene, or Pat used to arrive on scene, and you'd have the fire department there, the house is in flames, or the apartment. Mom's over here, dad's over here, the kids are somewhere in the middle. They all evacuated out different doors, but nobody knows where anybody is. And the panic of not knowing that. You simply said to your family, if we have to evacuate our house because of a fire, we'll meet across the street in front of Mrs. Smith's house. Your family would know to go there, and you're going to know very quickly everybody has made it out safely. This is so simple, and it cuts down on the confusion. It saves you from panicking. And if somebody doesn't show up, you can let the fire department know, and they may be able to go in and help that person. If you both work downtown or you both work close together, identify a meeting place. Usually you would pick up your cell phone and say, I'll meet at the corner of Robson and Granville. Well, if you don't have a cell phone to say where you're going to meet, that's not going to do you any good. So have a pre-identified location. You have a summer home, do the same thing there. We all live different lives, so think about where you and your family may have to meet and have that meeting place. So not a difficult thing to do. Out of area contact, your family is going to be your number one concern. Where are they? How are they? Are they safe? And back in the day, we used to have phones that looked like that, and now we don't see very many phones that plug into the wall at all anymore. Most of us are using cell phones. So the out-of-area contact has changed in how you use it, but it's a way of connecting your extended family. So with an out-of-area contact, you identify somebody out of the province that will become your out-of-area contact. If something happens and you can't get a hold of your family, you call that person and they'll write down, where you are, how you are, and then when other family members phone in, you'll get updates on that person. And this works extremely well at connecting families. If you have no way to connect with, mom and dad or grandparents or your kids, this can do really well. Many years ago, I had a lady in my office from Christchurch, New Zealand, and we were talking about earthquakes and we're talking about out-of-area contacts, and she said, Jackie, will you be my out-of-area contact? And I thought, sure, yeah, I'm happy to do it. Nobody wants me. I live in a danger zone for earthquakes, so I was quite happy. I was an out-of-area contact. And she went back to Christchurch and never thought much about it. And one night, quite late at night, my phone rang and I thought, who's calling me this late at night? It's probably another house fire. But I picked it up and the phone was all crackly and I couldn't hear anything. And I was about to hang up, and I heard a voice say, "Is this Jackie?" And I said, "Yes, it is. Who's calling?" She said, "You don't know me, but you're my out-of-area contact. I live in New Zealand, and my mom is Carol, and you're my out-of-area contact. We've had a major earthquake, and I can't find my mom." So she went on to say that, their house had some damage. Their kitchen door, the floor had buckled, and they couldn't get out that door, but their front door was fine. They had emergency supplies. They were okay, but she didn't know if her mom, where she was, how she was. So we hung up, and I tried calling Carol, and call did not go through right away. But I kept at it, and eventually Carol picked up the phone, and I said, "Carol, it's Jackie in Vancouver. How are you?" "Oh, you'll never guess, we had an earthquake." I said, "Carol, I know you had an earthquake." And she said, "I can't find my daughter." I said, "Carol, your daughter is fine." Now, who would have thought a call through Vancouver would connect a family in Christchurch? So this does work, but it's only going to work if you got it in place before the disaster happened. So this is an excellent way to connect with family. It may not be instant, but you may not have any instant ways to do it. But this works well. And social media also can work. So have some options of ways that you can connect with your family. Disaster supplies, what you need. Those were the store shelves in COVID where things were hard to find. You couldn't find toilet paper, flour, hair dye. All of that was at a premium. And we've got to make sure we get it. With COVID, trucks were still coming in. In an earthquake, that may not be the case. So your grab-and-go kit is essentially a backpack that you keep by the front door of where you go in and out, and it's got basic items. Your grab-and-go kit is for the short term. That's what you're going to take with you if you have to flee to safety. That's what Joe and Helen should have had, who lived in Lytton when their house burnt down. This would have been a really good start for them to have the grab-and-go kit. What do you think are some items you would want to put in your grab-and-go kit? Radio and batteries, water. Medication, if you talk to your doctor first.
Walkie-talkie.
You could put a walkie-talkie in. First aid kit. What happens if the fire's at 3 o'clock in the morning? You may not have time to get dressed. Having a change of clothes, having a pair of shoes, a set of car keys, and some ID, having some cash, all of those things that you're going to need. Again, you'll get a list of things, but what items that you'll need, if you're a family of one, you just need one kit. If you're a family of 4, you'll have 4 kits. Each person should have their own kit. If you're a grandparent and you have grandkids stay with you, you should have kits for them as well.
When my sister-in-law had an earthquake down in California, I remember her saying, "You're supposed to keep a pair of sturdy shoes right under the bed."
Yeah, no, keeping...
And also, if you wear glasses, keep them right next to you,
Yeah.
too.
Having a pair of sturdy shoes under the bed for an earthquake can be a really good thing to do. And you're right, with eyeglasses, next time you get a prescription refilled, throw your old set into your grab-and-go kit so you've got them. So, good point. Okay, your home kit. This is your larger kit where you're going to have your can opener and all your cans of food. And this is your stay and survive kit. This is what you're going to be able to survive on when you're at home. So you want to make sure you've got both kits. Those are the 2 main kits. Lots of other kits you can look at. If you have pets, take your pets into consideration when you're putting your kits together. So, I don't know where to start. Good news is you don't have to figure it all out alone. There's a number of ways that you can get prepared. There's a number of tools out there, and it doesn't have to be difficult. The province, and you've got a lot of the provincial brochures here now, they have some excellent brochures. City of Vancouver has a lot of resources. I did a video with the city on disaster preparedness before I left the city, which is about 5 years ago, and they still got the video on there. So if you want to hear me talk more about disaster preparedness, you can go there. I also have an online program. I have free resources on my website, and Prep Buddy, it's an AI generated thing that'll tell you exactly how prepared you are. So lots of resources out there for you, but you've got to take action. You've got to get prepared. And you know, the brochures you've got back there, that is a great place to start. So you've got some help there. So yeah, the quiz, you just go onto the website, ask it a few questions, and it'll tell you where you're doing well or not doing so well. And that's on my website. But preparation is key, and the time to prepare is now. So, you know, you don't want to be forced to try to run through your home and grab everything as you're fleeing to safety. You want to do it now. And it's really important to do. You may have a lot of people counting on you that need you there to help support them. So definitely think about that. And we do have some time for some questions. I know it's been a lot of talking, a lot of information spewing out.
And,
Yeah.
I'd like to know what happens when I've been told that the ladders that the fire department use go up to the 9th floor. We have a multitude of high-rises much higher. What happens?
Okay, I can't really speak for the fire department, but what I can tell you is a lot of the newer buildings have the sprinkler systems and all of that in. We don't see a lot of fires in the newer buildings, but that, if that's something you're really concerned about, I would reach out to the fire department on that. They can answer that much better. I'm not a fire person, so. But, you know, having your kit, being able to, you know, get down the stairs, we do see that a lot with the high rises now where you may have a person with a disability or even, you know, a frail senior person living on a higher floor. How do they get out? And, you know, what we tell people to do is to go to your balcony, get the attention. The fire department always walks around the perimeter of the building, get your attention, and even better, have a neighbor check in on you and, you know, get the help that way. But yeah, it's a great question, and I know down in Las Vegas there's been fires where they weren't able to reach up. So, but you can call 311 and they can put you through to who you need to talk to at the fire department.
Whether it's a fire or whether it's an earthquake, you know, either way, just how would you get to these people?
Yeah, and if you're in a high rise and there is an earthquake, the high rises, again, I'm not a construction person, but the high rises are built to sort of shift with, that's the way they're built. So if you're in an apartment, you will feel swaying, but you know, they say that's a good thing. So I lived on the 24th floor down in Yaletown, and there was a windstorm and I could feel the buildings, and it was a horrible feeling. And I went to work the next day and found one of our engineers and said, "What the heck?" And he said, no, that's good. You want it to sway. That's the way they're constructed, to go with that sway, but it does not feel good. Yeah?
One very disappointing thing about a house fire, my parents had a serious house fire 40 years ago, and within 3 days, their house was totally looted. And everything precious that my mom had in there was gone.
Yeah.
So I had to hire a company to come and watch the rest of the house for the next few days.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed. This is in Fairview Slopes.
Yeah.
And
No,
it just took everything.
That's horrible. What the fire department does now, and this again is covered with your insurance, if you were to have a house fire tonight, they will board up your house. The insurance company, you know, will put boards on the windows for
My father didn't have any insurance. He didn't believe in it.
Yeah, so a lot of people like that. If it's an apartment building, they hire a security company to do the perimeter, and that's covered through the building's insurance. But yeah, that's why we need insurance, to keep our stuff safe and protected.
Yeah, he ended up, well, I gave him our tent, and he ended up living on the side yard. We had a front yard, a backyard, and a side yard. So he put the tent up in the yard, and he stayed down by the house until the security company came and took over.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Did he get
that was a real
insurance
shame.
after?
They moved out to Richmond, and I made sure they got insurance.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I think I saw a hand over here. Oh,
I started filling out this plan. I think I know where the electrical panels shut off and the water main valve is. And the gas valve, I'm able to turn it off from the outside?
okay. If you're in a house, you will have a gas meter on the side of your house.
Yes.
Only turn off your gas if necessary. If you just turn off your gas because you can't turn it back on, you need a licensed gas person to do that. So you would lose your gas if you didn't need to turn it off. If you do need to turn it off, do so if it's safe to do so. And does anyone know what gas smells like? Rotten egg. So if you smell that rotten egg smell or hear a hissing noise, then you should turn it off if it's safe to do so. So I would go to the Fortis BC website. They have some very good diagrams and information on your gas and gas safety for your home.
Okay.
So they're the experts in the gas.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I learned something new from one of those slides tonight.
Oh,
That
good.
never occurred to me before, and that is one kit per person.
One kit per person. Yeah, you don't want to have a big kit that's so heavy. If you have one kit per person, it's easy to throw a backpack on your back. So the grab and go kits are for the short term. That's like a house fire. If you're on evacuation alert, which could happen in Vancouver, you would put your grab and go kit and your home kit in your car. So if you had to evacuate, you would not end up like Joe and Hilda with nothing. You would have some stuff. And your pets need one too if you have pets. We do a whole 90-minute pet preparedness course. Yep.
I have a good suggestion.
Okay.
I live in a condo that
Yeah.
has 2 exits. If I'm in the bedroom, there's no way I'm getting to them because the hallway is the fire will be between me and the exits. So I have a hammer in each of my bedrooms to get myself out the window.
Okay.
That little window you're not getting out. The little one that opens is not big enough.
Yeah, and again, it would depend, if the fire was raging, but you may be able to get out, but you've got a backup plan in case it doesn't work. If you can get the notice of the fire department, they may be able to, come up and help get you out the window. So.
No, there's a little hole. It's
Okay.
those little things. They're useless.
But you've thought it through and you've got a plan, and that is excellent. Yeah.
So I lived in Toronto, and I lived on the 10th floor of a high-rise. But then I had a child, and I had to move once the child started walking. They would only allow children on the highest second floor.
Wow.
Is there a rule like that in Vancouver?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I think times have probably changed since that, or maybe that was a building rule. I have never come across that, and I've been to a lot of
As
buildings.
soon as she started to walk, we had to move to the second floor.
Okay, yeah, no, I've never heard of that
I mean,
here.
that you could consider that for somebody with a disability in a wheelchair or something like that. That rather than being on the 24th floor and can't get out
Yeah.
or anything, maybe there should be a rule like that for somebody with wheelchair accessibility and.
Yeah, no, nothing like that I'm aware of. So, first time I've ever heard that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I just want to finish off with Joe and Hilda. So we've talked about Joe and Hilda a lot through this. I did receive a letter from Hilda. We worked together quite closely for a couple of months. They had to live in a little trailer for about 1.5 years. And I think now they probably have moved into a new home. But, she said she knows I teach a lot of earthquake preparedness sessions and disaster preparedness. And she said, if you tell people one thing and tell them to get prepared, if you're on alert, get those photos, get all those mementos that you value into your vehicle. Don't get caught. Don't think it'll never happen to you, because it definitely can. And they never thought it would happen to them. So I hope from this tonight that you will take the steps to get prepared. And, we all know we need to be, but very few people are. The last study, 80% of our population was not prepared. So means probably a lot of you here are not. So I hope you take this seriously, get prepared, and hopefully you never have to use it. But if you do, you'll know what to do and you'll be able to do it safely. So thank you for being here and good luck getting prepared. Did you have a question?
Yes, I was told that in Richmond you cannot buy earthquake insurance.
I'm not familiar with Richmond, so I don't know.
Try BCA.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be, if you live in Richmond, that would be a call to your insurance company.
Try BCA.
Or maybe a call to your realtor
Yeah.
to move.
No, but BCA, I'm pretty sure would.
For both condo and single family, I believe you can.
You can? Okay, absolutely.
Good. Okay. Okay, well, good luck getting prepared, and thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you at the next event, hopefully, and have a good night.
Jackie, do you want us to put those checklists by the door here for people?